You can't. Yeah, I moved my chair. You can't see, but I'm pointing at you. Um, Moneyball it. Aristotle walked around the market in ancient Athens, haranguing people, just grabbing them and saying, "Listen to me, I've got something incredibly important to tell you." And if they didn't say, "Get away from me, old man," they said, "What? What? What is it? What is it?" He said, "You don't know anything. You know nothing. You know nothing. I know nothing. Nobody knows anything." One of those days, they think, and it's. I think this story might be apocryphal, but if that really was something he did, he was so on the money in what he was thinking and so off the money in what to do about it. Because you know some things, but there's a lot that you think you know that you don't know. But going and telling you that directly and haranguing you, imagine grabbing someone somewhere one day might be watching this in the city of Athens on their phone or the holo tablet or whatever comes next. Might be watching it and they're on a bus or they're walking to meet a friend through a marketplace, and a man with a beard has just grabbed their attention and prevailed himself of their time and believed that what he was saying was worth it, and he's told them that they don't know anything. I want to change. I want to give a new version of that statement. It's going to sound so simple, but sonder it. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna put the words up on the thing. I don't know how to do that. But I'm gonna point to them as if I did. Imagine it's kind of children's TV and they pop up. Boop. You don't know anything until you think about it. That sounds so obvious. You don't know anything until you think about it. Obviously, you have to think about something to know something about it, but you don't actually have to think about something to feel like you know something about it. This is the ruse that everyone in Athens was playing on themselves, that Aristotle was trying to turn around and get people to say, no, I might be talking about Socrates. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. Oh, I think I am. I think I mean Socrates. I'm not going to re record this, it's work. Luckily, the good news about this is that it means that the person walking through the marketplace has now had time to finish that walk, and somehow that invalidates what I was saying earlier. So Socrates said this to people because there's a whole bunch of things that we think we know, and we go one step further than that. We use our knowledge of them to affect how we make decisions and how we live in the world and change it and affect it. That we don't know because actually we haven't thought about them, but we think we have. How do you know what you know? Where have you got the knowledge from? Have you checked it? Does it hold up to your own scrutiny if you really think it through? Study of etymology is the study of how how things come to be known, what can be known, and like many schools of philosophy, it has major important works. Like many schools of philosophy, I have effectively not read them and don't know what's in them. Um, but there's no clear answer, and particularly to the question of how do you decide what you believe. If I give you a new piece of information, how do you decide if you're going to believe it or not? And it's really hard to, especially if that new piece of information is something really surprising and new. There's a whole bunch of reasons that you might put it aside, that you might disagree with it, that you might dislike it, or that you might be disinterested in it. That last one, that's the kicker. That's the one that gets to people who are otherwise rational and conscientious human beings who think they think through concepts. You would be amazed how many concepts you throw away before really actually evaluating them through disinterest. And that's a little feedback loop. You don't remember the things that you weren't interested in, they're just gone. You see something out the corner of your eye, a little bit of your brain goes like, that's pretty interesting, should we think about that? And the rest goes, no. And it never happened. It probably did happen, it's probably stored somewhere, it probably has some imprint, but you certainly don't really get to sonder it. And a lot of the things we know or think we know are things we're told, or things we infer imperfectly, and we build up whole libraries of them over a lifetime. Over a lifetime of days. Over our time in the womb, probably. Possibly imprinted us on the history of the gametes that went into us. Already there are little chaotic influences that are affecting what we can and cannot easily believe. And breaking through them is really hard. If you ever look at someone and say, how can you possibly believe that? That's crazy. How can you think that's true? There will be some semi-logical, semi-self-consistent web, as good as your own reasons for believing something, of how they believe it. If you're ever in an argument with someone, if you're ever disagreeing with someone, and you otherwise believe that they are rational and, I keep using this phrase, and I think it's a good phrase, rational and conscientious. What more could we ask of people? You're having an argument with someone, but they're a rational and conscientious person, and yet you don't see eye to eye on an issue, particularly if it's something like a moral issue. Nine times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10, you might be using the same words, you might be talking about the same vague subject, but you are not arguing the same point. Because they're arguing the point that's made out of all the things that they've inherited and surmised and inducted, and you're arguing the point made out of all the things that you have. And you've both got these Frankenstein's monsters of a point, and if there's a disconnect in the very fabric of what you're arguing, that's kind of the only way that there can be a lingering disconnect in you agreeing or not agreeing about it. My glass of water has gone. I knew it was in this room, but it isn't. That's a very, very feeble example of this, but I said at the beginning, Moneyball it, and I haven't made much sense of what that means. Moneyball was a name given by a manager of the Oakland Athletics baseball team for the game that they played one season. It was a season where, going into that season, they were poor. They had only a fraction of the funds that other teams in the same league, they were in the major American league, Major League Baseball, but they had a fraction of the money and were being asked to compete with them. and they found a way to. And though they didn't win the season, they had one of the most amazing seasons in baseball. I'm saying as someone I've watched one baseball match, so I know what I'm talking about. And what they did was that they realised that they could play a simpler game than everyone else was playing. Because everyone else was playing the game of baseball, which has a whole bunch of rules. And they're complex rules, and you've got to fit all of them together. And to be good at it, you have to be good at lots of different places, and you're going to be different levels of good at all these things. And so, who is good, and what is good, and what makes a good team? In the game of baseball, honestly, it's probably an unanswerable question in the absolute. But the game of Moneyball is much simpler. And there's two really important realizations about the game of Moneyball. First is the rules. The game of Moneyball is the game of how many people can you get to first base for $1. And actually, because baseball players pay large salaries, you could equally call this how many people can you get to first base for $10,000 or even $1 million. But you're buying bases. So your priority is to pick the people who, for the least dollar value, get to first base the most. Why first base? For anyone who doesn't watch baseball, in baseball, 4 bases, you can run as far as you want, but if someone throws the ball to the base you're running to, you're called out. And so, some people will hit the ball a long way and run 2-3 bases the whole way around, a home run. But actually, if every batter steps up and hits the ball and gets to first base, you just have a little train of people going around, just reliably getting to first base, next person getting to second base, getting to third base, getting to fourth base, and getting a run. And you might not be able to play the game of Moneyball today. Something like baseball evolves. Like, you require the percentage of people getting to first base to be quite high, over 75%, to actually score runs this way. But if you can get people who get to first base 80-90% of the time, you can do fantastically. And specifically, if you're doing that and you know their dollar value, and you get them for cheap, because everyone else is valuing them for different reasons, and everyone else is valuing other people who have other attributes, and you go, no, don't care about it. I don't care that they hit a lot of home runs. I don't care that they're a popular heartthrob player. I just want to pay whoever I can the least to get to first base. And you can play the game of Moneyball, and the amazing thing is, if you play the game of Moneyball and you're playing the game of Moneyball well, you're playing the game of baseball well. It's a much simpler game that you can pretty much solve. You can map this all out. You can run the numbers, and they did, and they got the players. And the story is more complex than just that, but the simpler kind of fable that I don't think is untrue or unfair within it is, if you can find the simpler game, you can kind of show everyone that what they thought they knew of the rules of the game of baseball isn't quite true, because although there might be strict rules to the game of baseball, if the objective of the game of baseball is to win games, and you can win it with this whole other value set and this whole other decision-making process, then is the decision-making process and the value sets of the people still playing classic baseball true and valid and worthwhile? And have they thought about it? Have they sondered it? I've talked before about when I first started putting this theory together. about how I saw how deep and how shallow ran the analogy of machine learning and the human brain. And I'm not saying it's a perfect analogy. I'm not saying that machine learning looks like the human brain yet. It's got a lot of similarities. And we'll talk about the differences. But I saw that and I went turtles all the way down. I went cascading down through all the complex numbers are complex numbers. All numbers are complex numbers, just some of them don't have imaginary parts. And then I started, partly by choice, partly because I was in a very positive place in my life. I started doing something which many people probably have done in history, but René Descartes, is famously did this. I started questioning everything, just picking apart everything I knew, deconstructing everything I could think of. At the same time with this, I was learning about unconscious bias and worrying about things like, am I taking up a spot for someone else to be in my position in academia? Am I even with well intentions actually causing more harm than good in the things I'm doing to try and do good? Do I believe the things I thought I believe? Do I like the people I call friends? Do I gain things from the media I consume? I mean, everything. Those are nitty examples that I can come up with sitting at a computer screen, but I just questioned everything because I really felt like I could get to the bottom of it by being rational. That it might have a turtle at the bottom. What I never really realised is that it doesn't all have to make sense. And later what I realised is that it cannot all make sense. I'll talk about that as we come to it, but turtles all the way down makes more sense than there's a turtle at the bottom. Because the whole reason why turtles all the way down works is because it gets rid of the scary thing, the thing that you can't picture or explain, which is the bottom. Don't go too deep. Question the things you think you know, and particularly the things you think you know that affect others. We all know. We really all know that your intentions are good. Or at least that your intentions are for your intentions to be good. You might find, as you go through questioning these things, that your actions and the culmination of them, the end result, isn't good. And that's when it gets scary, and I think that's when you dig in your heels and stop questioning things. And certainly I have, and certainly I've seen people doing this, because we want to be benevolent, and sometimes by mistake, because of misinformation, because of bad chance, we are not benevolent. I'll talk more about where and how morality comes out, but there's a quote, I won't get it perfectly, from the TV show Russian Doll, And there's probably lots of quotes I could put in this place, but this is the one that comes to mind. There's two people talking. One of them is the epitome of rationality. He's a careful, methodical, quite obsessive young man. And the other is this completely anarchic character, a sort of semi-beatnik, pseudo-philosopher, everything and nothing person. And you can tell which one of these two I prefer. Don't pick sides. And the careful, conscientious one says that this is an opportunity. I'm not even going to explain the context. Watch Russian Doll if you're interested. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it. They say something about them not wanting to be a bad person, and the response they get from this anarchic character is, what's this bad person business? I mean, there's Hitler, and then there's everybody else. And that's it. There isn't. Morality is a thing that we map on top of life that actually doesn't really stand up to scrutiny, and even I'll save the rest for talking about morality. There's a lot I want to go into with this, but just to say that if in going through the things that you know and think you know, and reappraising them and reappraising how you would have acted differently or something like that, if you had known these in time, just know that you're not good or bad because you did or did not act in a certain way, or did or did not act on a certain assumption. Because we're never one or the other. We're a collection of all of them. And we're all just trying to be